Greetings, fellow Toastmasters and listeners. I'm Meenakshi, your podcast manager, and I'm here today with my fellow podcaster, Toastmaster Akarshak. And we welcome you to the second episode of Toast to Success, where we take things to the next level. And on this occasion of Toastmasters International completing a whole of 100 years, we have a very special guest with us today.
So we have the Toastmasters CEO, Mr. Daniel Rex, who is the Chief Executive Officer, and as this role, he leads the Toastmaster World Headquarters team in providing service, resources, and support to over 270,000 members in 14,000 clubs in 150 countries. He works closely with the international president and the board of directors to develop the future of Toastmasters and create and execute plans and strategies to reach those goals. Rex has worked for Toastmasters since 1990, and during that time, he has led several departments at World Headquarters, giving him a unique perspective and an impressive depth of knowledge of the organization. We are very excited to welcome Daniel Rex on our podcast today. Welcome aboard, Daniel. If we could have some quick words from you.
Thank you and greetings. Great to be with you today. I appreciate the invitation. I know that at this point in time, we're all celebrating the 100th anniversary of Toastmasters, a very exciting time for us organizationally and in my mind for each club to remember our roots and to look forward into the future.
All right. And like you rightly pointed out, since we are celebrating the 100th year, I would now like to unveil the name of today's episode. And the name of today's episode is Timeless Toast, Tale of 100 Years. So where we reflect on the last 100 years of Toastmasters International. Dan, we read your introduction and you have a long list of accolades. Would you like to share a few things about us, about your background? And mind you, we are from District 98, which is one of the biggest districts in India. It covers the regions of Mumbai, Gujarat, Rajasthan, and Madhya Pradesh. So to all the listeners of District 98, would you like to share something with us about your background?
Sure. My primary professional background is with Toastmasters. I'll be achieving 35 years this coming July. So I've had the opportunity to work with district leaders now for 34 generations. So do I know your past district directors? Absolutely, I do. Do I know Toastmasters in India before there was even a single district? And there were only a handful of clubs. And I was working directly with those who were beginning to form the Toastmasters movement in India and Sri Lanka. And they were working together in those early days. Absolutely. It's been a privilege and a pleasure to be part of Toastmasters' global expansion and our strengthening in many areas of the world over time.
Wow, Daniel, that's been a very long association. It's pretty close to my age. I'm 34 years old. So I think that's a fabulous journey you've had so far. Dan, we can quickly jump into just a quick introduction for you. We just want to get to know you as a person. And we can start with probably a summary of your professional career, maybe in 2 to 3 minutes.
Sure. Again, I've been in my current role with different titles for about 16 years. I came to Toastmasters expecting to be with the organization for 2 or 3 years, but I had a boss who understood me much better than I understood myself, and he kept giving me different challenges. So I began as the membership manager. Soon, everything related to any type of marketing was in my area of responsibility. Logistics followed after that. At one point, I was responsible for IT. I've worked with our board of directors for 35 years. I've been in board meetings and involved in the decision-making processes for a very long time. Outside of the organization, I tend to stay very busy. I am involved with an organization called the American Society of Association Executives. It's the association for association people like me. Periodic meetings throughout the year, involved on a committee with them. I also find it necessary to have personal experiences outside of Toastmasters. So while for many Toastmasters is a hobby, for me it's work. And what that means is there are times when I need separation. I'm a very proud grandfather of a little boy named James who is nearly 2 years old. And I also participate in a variety of activities. I engage in snow skiing, scuba diving, cycling, bicycling, motorcycle riding, hiking, camping. So I tend to be very physically active and do things that are completely occupying.
Yeah. I was just about to say, you do not look like somebody's grandfather at all. But now we know the secret to your healthy look.
You're very kind. You're very kind. Yeah. I'm married. I have 3 kids. Our youngest is 30, and she is the mother of our grandson.
Wow. All right. If you would like to share with us something about your childhood memory, what was it like growing up?
Oh, I grew up in an interesting kind of environment. My grandfather, my father's father, was an employee of the U.S. State Department. So my father and his family grew up in South America primarily, and a little bit in the Caribbean and in Africa. And so I was, from a very early age, exposed to thinking and experiences that were more global in nature rather than US focused. Languages spoken when we were together, there was always English, but there was also Spanish and Portuguese mixed into these conversations. And so I had a very outward looking perspective from early on. And when I became part of Toastmasters, I was drawn to the opportunities that I saw that we had globally, opportunities where there were no Toastmasters clubs and meetings, and places where we were in our early stages. And it was my perspective that we could expand there quite significantly. Coupling that perspective with a very outdoors focused lifestyle, but as in addition to that, an introspective family culture, a lot of reading, a lot of discussions on different topics. And I read a couple of books a week, and I've been reading every day since I was 10 years old. And it's just not something I can put down. It's part of learning. I think that it's the responsibility of every person to continue to grow themselves. And there are a lot of ways to gain information. I choose to use reading as a primary method for me, as well as other ways. But if we're not growing, then we're falling behind. And we can never believe that we've reached a pinnacle or we've reached a place that we can stop. We just have to keep going and keep going.
Would you
Wow,
like to
Daniel.
share with us, what are you currently reading?
Oh, I'm rereading a book that I love, and I'm gonna not remember the title, but it's based on the journeys of Shakespeare's Henry IV and the leadership journey that he experiences. And gosh, and I can't remember the name of the author. Maybe we can edit it in later.
Yeah.
It's one of my favorites, and it's something that I fall back on. So I tend to have a sort of a leadership business book that I'm reading. I might have a fiction book that I'm reading, and then maybe some kind of history book that I'm reading at the same time. And I bounce back and forth between those different genres of books.
I think we have a lot of book lovers in the house today. I used to be one
Excellent.
of them. Unfortunately, I've lost the habit. I'm still trying to pick it up. There was a time I could finish a book in less than a day, maybe even in a single sitting. But unfortunately, these platforms digitally, they have made me lose the attention span.
Yeah, it's very easy to shift the way that we engage with learning and the way that we engage with information that's coming at us. And I've made deliberate choices to categorize the ways that I'm going to receive information and how much time I'm going to assign to each. It's really easy to get caught up in social media or video platforms and maybe not go as deep into a subject as I would like to.
Wonderful. Thank you, Daniel, for your introduction. We are very inspired and we are looking forward to learning so many things from you. First of all, let's congratulate all of us. We completed 100 years as Toastmasters. Now we can begin the question answer session with you, Daniel.
Sure.
So we would love to know, on the occasion of Toastmasters completing 100 years, anything special that you would like to share with the members of District 98? Any
Sure.
initiatives, anything that you have been doing?
Yeah. No, it's not an initiative. It's probably more of a challenge. On the evening, local time here of October 22nd, it was my privilege to join online by Zoom the meeting of Smedley Chapter 1. So this is Club 1, the first club that met and continued to meet. So it's really the anniversary of that club that we're celebrating as 100 years. And to be invited to be a part of that meeting and share a few comments was really inspirational for me and an enjoyable thing. And it caused me to think a lot about the importance of Smedley's vision, the way that he saw things working, the passion that he had for communication and leadership, but more specifically for experiential learning. He was a huge believer in the learn by doing approach that Toastmasters has adopted and has maintained over these years. If we were to see one of those early meetings, I think we'd recognize it. And if those early members were to see one of our modern meetings, I think they'd recognize it. There's much that's the same: speeches and evaluations, impromptu speaking, someone leading the meeting, timing, grammar work, those types of things are very consistent. But the key to it all, in my perspective, is the experiential part. You can read in books wherever you want how to speak and how to lead, but doing it, getting in there and practicing, that is Toastmasters' uniqueness and our great differentiator in the marketplace.
Absolutely. Would you like to walk us through these last 100 years in terms of what were the most important milestones according to you?
Yeah, it's really difficult to look back and pick out the most important, but there are clearly some important things. The first was Smedley lived in a place in the 1920s where Toastmasters could take root and begin to grow. And that was very important. In those first 10 years through the mid 1930s, we don't have an exact count of the clubs because there were clubs that were just popping up that they didn't really know about and weren't connected to. And that drove them to create in the early 1930s Toastmasters International as a way of bringing the clubs together and creating a system of consistency and expectation around club meetings. So that was a very critical piece. There's some early discussion about crossing national boundaries. So the first club in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada, and then clubs starting in the UK. And the organization's founders starting to think of Toastmasters as being international, because Toastmasters in their minds would have been one club. Toastmasters was that meeting. And it wasn't, Smedley didn't have a giant global vision of what Toastmasters could become. And when you look at what he wrote about it, he would be startled by the sheer scope of where we are now. There were certainly some factors that led to the distribution of Toastmasters around the world. Unfortunately, World War II was one of them. World War II, a tragic event globally, but the connection of Toastmasters members to different places around the globe started spreading Toastmasters worldwide. And there are some clubs that go back to the 1940s and 50s that are clearly a direct result of military people. And then later in the 60s and 70s, there began to be more clubs that were connected with organizations. And those organizations might be companies, might be corporations. Organizations might be government agencies or not-for-profits or anything else. And that created an incredible growth time in the organization and a setup for some explosive growth in the 1980s. If we go back to the 1970s, the most pivotal moment there was the transition to welcoming women into Toastmasters clubs. And that was not an easy transition organizationally or for some clubs that were very accustomed to just having men. But clearly, looking back on it, it was a pivotal moment for the organization. And now we're over 50% women in the organization. And it's our Smedley's vision, his program, his methods have been for many people, many women, many men all over the world, a way to find their voice and to become a more effective part of their community, whatever that community is. And then through the 90s and through the 2000s up until now, expansive global growth and the solid establishment of Toastmasters in South Asia, in East Asia, in Africa, in different parts of Africa. When I first came to Toastmasters, we were primarily North American with some in the rest of the world. But now it's the other way. North America is less than half of the Toastmasters world. And I think that's a great thing. Smedley's vision has become an active tool for humanity, and that shouldn't be restricted by geography.
Absolutely. And would you like to talk to us about the latest pandemic that hit us in 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic? So over the last 100 years, Toastmasters International survived two major, one was the World War and one was the pandemic.
Yeah, the pandemic was and is a very difficult time for us organizationally. And we're meeting by an online video technology today. If that did not exist, I'm not sure what would have happened to Toastmasters during the pandemic. It was very clear to us in March and April of 2020 that online meetings needed to quickly become the norm, and clubs were ahead of the organization, as it always is. In an organization like ours, it's not driven by certainly my team at headquarters or me. The most important things happen at club meetings, and club meetings started to adapt to meeting online very early. And we were having some preliminary meetings with clubs in China, and they were demonstrating to us things that we hadn't figured out yet, like virtual backgrounds and proper lighting and microphones and all of that goodness that we now take for granted, that organizationally we didn't understand. But during the pandemic, 75%-ish of clubs decided to meet online, but 25% of all clubs worldwide disappeared over a very short amount of time. And from the organization standpoint, from a corporate perspective, and then the existing clubs got smaller. So it was about a 30% loss in income. And that's a very difficult thing for an organization to adapt to shift the way that it works and the way that it supports, and to shift the way it engages with ongoing initiatives and that sort of thing. We're finally, I'm so happy to say, stabilized, and we're coming out of the pandemic.
Yeah.
I see us needing to, in the next several years, become stronger and begin to grow in all parts of the world again. We're growing in some places, and we're still seem to be rocked by the pandemic in other places and are not moving in the way that I think we need to. So we've got some challenges ahead. Certainly we've faced some challenges and we've survived them and are moving forward.
Yeah. So you spoke about the evolution of meetings during pandemic. How about reflecting on the journey of how did communication as a whole change over the last 100 years?
I can speak more clearly about my time with the organization, and my early days was pre-email. There was no way to communicate with clubs around the world other than postal mail. So it was, and corresponding early with the clubs in India. There's a club in Bangalore called Garden City. And I remember corresponding with those who were forming Garden City, and it would take 2 weeks for a physical letter in an envelope to get to India, some time for them to think about it, respond, write a letter back to me, and 2 weeks for it to return. And you chuckle about it today because you're both of the age where you don't know about that, right? You didn't experience it firsthand. But it was just the norm. Things were slower. There was, of course, no online anything. And I remember setting up the first email addresses in headquarters and being able to quickly have communication and conversations with clubs, district leaders from different places around the world. And then later, as web transactions became the norm, needing to do some significant overhauls to our systems to enable us to first receive education award applications online, conduct transactions, receive dues payments, sell products, do all those kinds of things. That all, in the early days, of course, happened by hand.
Mm.
At headquarters, we're about 120 people, not too many people, but we're the inheritors of the first person that Smedley and the crew hired early on to manage some accounting processes and keep records. And over time, that has grown to support the global membership. And our job is really to provide support. We work with the board on determining what the programs are and the systems are going to be, but then we help club leaders and individual members around the world in their experience. And that's what occupies most of our day to day. We support district leaders, of course. There's a team who does that, but it's a never ending task.
I think I can proudly say we are the last generation that actually enjoyed the benefits of how it was to live offline. Because when we were growing up, the online was just coming up. So in a way, we are blessed to see that. And taking a step back, like beyond Toastmasters, any success stories that you have where Toastmasters led to an impact in someone's life? And maybe you can also share how often do you travel different places while you have been in Toastmasters covering these stories?
Yeah. It's an amazing thing to meet with individual members who have experienced a significant change in their life. And the most common thing that people say to me, and I ask a consistent question, how has Toastmasters changed your life? And often people haven't thought that it really has, and they might have to think about it for a moment. But there is always someone who says, Toastmasters gave me the confidence to be the person that I didn't know I could be. So when we look at what Toastmasters is designed to do, it's designed to give people an opportunity to practice and build communication skills and leadership skills. But that's not what people say at the end. When they talk about if they've been in for 2 years and you ask them an open-ended question, they always say Toastmasters changed my life. Yeah, it's followed up with, and I'm a comfortable speaker and I can do this and I can do that, but it changed my life through confidence. And that's amazing. That crosses languages, it crosses cultures, it crosses oceans. It is incredibly consistent globally. That is how people talk about the Toastmasters experience. And as small as from in my club meeting 25 years ago, witnessing someone who tried to answer a table topics question and could not, and just sat down without saying any words. And the next time they said a few words, and the next time they hit the green light, and the next time they hit the red light. And then after that, they had to flash the red light. This progress in being able to do something that they had the tools inside. They just didn't know how to put the tools together and organize it, and didn't have the confidence to stand up and do it. And I've heard other stories. People have told me I got promoted. I took my boss's job because of what Toastmasters taught me to do. I've heard that countless times. I wanted to make a difference in my community. I want to make a difference at the school that my children attend. I want to make a difference here. And I didn't have the skills. I didn't have the confidence to do that. And Toastmasters helped me. And now I've done it.
I think one word which I can summarize your experience would be gratitude.
Oh, gratitude is immense. Gratitude is immense.
Yeah. Just a follow up to the last question. How many countries have you traveled to, and which one is your favorite and why?
The number of countries, I don't know. I've never really counted the number of countries, but it's been many. Yeah, I don't know. And I think about South Asia. I've been to India several times, probably 6 or 8 times. I've been to Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka.
Any favorites?
Sorry?
Any favorites?
Yeah, I don't like that question because it's exclusionary. And I'll tell you how I view traveling to different places. It's going to be different from where you live. When you travel somewhere else, it's going to be different. If you want it to be the same, stay home. The food's going to be different. The language will probably be different. The culture will be different. And I don't I don't judge or try and compare. I just love to be somewhere and to absorb and enjoy the experience that I'm having. And I'm very fortunate that at a very young age, I was exposed to a wide variety of different foods. So I eat everything, and I've never really run into any food anywhere in any country that I was not able to eat and enjoy.
Just to add to that, you must have met people from various different backgrounds since Toastmasters is a global organization. How important do you think are local communities in making the organization that it is over the last 100 years?
Oh, it's the most important thing of all. Local communities are the most important thing of all. The strength of Toastmasters is each club. And each club is driven by and influenced by the local community. And whether it's inside an organization or a community club or the various blends of those that happen, the influence of the local culture and the way things work is critical. And Toastmasters has never tried to bring Toastmasters into a country and say, this is how it must be in your country. Each country, each culture, each subculture, because certainly when we think about India, the number of subcultures in India is too large for me to even estimate. And each one experiences Toastmasters in a little bit different way. But as long as we follow the values and the processes and the programs, then Toastmasters functions really well. And I've been to 15 or 20 club meetings in India, and each one was different. It has common threads, but very different. So I don't think it's a question of taking a North American way of speaking and conducting meetings and overlaying it locally. It all evolves a little bit differently. I was meeting with a business executive. I was in Shanghai, China a few years ago, and his area of responsibility was all of China. And he was saying that Toastmasters in this multinational company that you recognize the name, the role of Toastmasters was to introduce young employees, college graduates, to international business culture and to how meetings can and should work, to how communication can and should work, to how presentations can and should work. And Toastmasters was the best way that they had found. And their graduates were not all local. They were people who had come to that country to receive their education. And it was a multicultural blend of people and languages. And that corporation's choice for its global language of business was English. But that's not always the case. But it's an amazing thing how Toastmasters works. I think that it's because humans, many of us, most of us perhaps, at some point like to be together or recognize a need to be together and to be effective together and to communicate in a way that's organized and fair and is not dominated by a person or two, but where we feel comfortable and at home and can grow. And that is a huge part of why Toastmasters has lasted 100 years.
Yeah. So just to give you an example, in India, we have a few bilingual clubs as well. So both English and Hindi, we have alternate meetings in English and Hindi. And it just goes to show that public speaking is a skill and language is just a medium.
It is. It is. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's amazing how Toastmasters adapts to the local. You made me think of a meeting I attended in Japan some years ago. It was a 60-minute meeting, 30 minutes in Japanese, 30 minutes in English. And usually I see a blend of language in a club meeting, or this meeting's going to be in one language and the next meeting's going to be in the other language. But putting it all together, that was a lot of skill. Fascinating. I'd like to come to your meetings sometime when I'm in the area. That'd be great.
Yeah.
Daniel, we are very surprised and also very happy to see the way you speak calm and composed. So any advice, any suggestion that you would want to give somebody who is looking to improve their public speaking skills?
Each of us adapts a public speaking persona or methodology that works for us. And trying to bring someone else's personality into our personality generally does not work in my observation and experience. And finding a place where we're comfortable, confident, and clear in the way that we communicate is very important, especially in leadership roles. And to find that way requires work and it requires skills. It's not enough to not have fear of public speaking. You can be awful and not be afraid. But to lose the fear and create a foundation of skills that make it a good experience for you and for the people that you're speaking with, whether it's one person or 1,000 people, that's what Toastmasters helps with. And whatever your journey is, wherever your goal is, and however it takes you, you can, I was going to say use, and I don't know a better word, you can figure out how to leverage the Toastmasters experience to build your skills to where they need to be for that objective. And club meetings are flexible enough to enable us to do that. I get people all the time who say to me, "Oh, I can't go to Toastmasters. I'm not a good public speaker." And I say, that's really the point.
Yeah.
If you're not, then you need to go and you can become confident, learn some skills, and then be pretty good. And not everyone is going to become a professional speaker, nor do they want to be. Everyone has their own goal. Where is it that you want to land in life? And how are you going to get there? Wherever that is, Toastmasters can help you because communication is required. You can be a good public speaker and not be a leader, but you can never be a really good leader without being a good speaker.
Indeed, indeed. Agreed.
Yeah. You spoke about leveraging the most out of Toastmasters. So, for example, a new member comes to you and says, "How do I reap the most out of this program?" What are the top two advice would you give to that person?
Sometimes I see new members who come to a club meeting and they believe that their speeches, their project speeches out of Pathways are really the most important thing, and the other pieces are not as important. That's not the way that I provide advice or guidance to people. I think the first thing that they need to do is become comfortable doing table topics, be the timer, learn how to evaluate, speak, and learn how to receive an evaluation. It takes all of this blended together. For me, when I first started going to Toastmasters meetings, I'd done a lot of public speaking, so I had no fear, but my skills were average. And I learned a lot of skills that helped me become better in a short period of time. But in that first year, the most learning for me came through table topics and learning how to structure a table topics response properly and be effective in an impromptu situation.
I think I resonate a lot with that because I initially started out on the table topics, preparing how to be an impromptu speaker. And now even my prepared speeches are like 10 to 20% impromptu prepared speeches. So yeah, that's very relatable. So Daniel, we would love to know, considering you have been associated with Toastmasters for so long, how do you see the next 5 years unfold? What is your vision for Toastmasters?
Yeah, as CEO, I don't have the liberty of creating my own vision. And I work with the board of directors to establish the organization's vision. And take a look, let's put a link in the video to the strategic plan, and you can read the envisioned future and the missions that will help us get there. But outside of that, where I think we need the most work right now is in club quality. And club quality is all wrapped around the club mission, and in ensuring that the communities that we serve have enough Toastmasters clubs to support the needs of those who need and want to participate in the program. Our contraction in the last years during the pandemic has reduced the number of opportunities and the frequency of opportunities that people have to participate. And so I think we need to strengthen there. We also, leaders changed quite a bit during the pandemic. There were those who were comfortable going to online meetings and those who weren't. And the significance of that is only becoming apparent now. There's been quite a bit of localized knowledge that is no longer there. And people that are the age the two of you are the leaders of the future in Toastmasters. And organizationally, it's critically important that we ensure that you're supported and trained and prepared properly for the roles that you're going to be occupying in the next few years.
Very well. You've been the CEO for almost like since 2013. And what are the key takeaway leadership skills, like you mentioned, future leaders like us? What are
Yeah.
the three main key takeaways from your leadership role would you like to share with us?
A lot of people who look at a role like mine have the illusion that there's an enormous amount of control that a CEO has. And that's an illusion. There is very little control, but there is influence. And there's an opportunity to work with many people. And in this way, an organization like Toastmasters is very different than a corporation that is a public corporation with shares and with shareholders and that sort of thing. Toastmasters is not driven by my headquarters team. As I mentioned previously, the most important thing in the organization is each club. So it is my opportunity and responsibility and that of my team to support and engage with and encourage clubs and influence clubs to conduct great meetings so that individuals have a fantastic member experience. And if I were to encapsulate all of the journey that I've had along the way, that's the conclusion that I've reached today about what is most important to the organization. And then one more thing that I've learned is that I reserve the right to get smarter later. The decisions that I make and the positions that I take are given the information and experience that I have today, but tomorrow is different. And we can't look back to create tomorrow. We have to look forward to create tomorrow. And we have to understand as best we can where we are now, where we want to be, and then determine how we're going to get there. And that's a significant task, whether it's locally at your club meeting or in District 98 or anywhere else in your life. Figuring out the future and making it happen is a big deal and something that we have to think about every day.
Speaking of future, we have crossed a threshold of 100 years. And how do you see the next 100 years? What kind of a legacy would you like to leave behind on a personal, on a professional front, and with respect to Toastmasters?
Yeah, I struggle with legacy at a personal level. I'm not convinced that it should be a goal of a leader to have a legacy of something. But where I think we are right now is we've come through 100 years, which is an amazing accomplishment. We're strong, but we could be stronger. We're large, but we could be larger. And if we collectively, the Toastmasters community worldwide, is at a point where we can continue the journey and become stronger and bigger. And the reason we want to become bigger is so that more people have the opportunity. I think about the two of you, and there was one person in one club in India at one point that thought, hey, I think we should have a Toastmasters club. That person didn't set out to create a legacy where you two would be on this podcast today, but that's what happened. That's what happened. That was the effect of their work. So we don't know exactly what the future holds, but if we make the right choices today, follow our values, do the right things, then the future has the opportunity to be big and bright.
Yeah. I would like to ask you, but most of it you've already answered. I would want to ask you, what would you like to share with the current and future leaders of District 98? To summarize, I would summarize whatever you've already said. That is, leadership is not about a position, but it's about creating influence.
Yeah, and I fully believe that. Leadership is not ever, good leadership in my mind is not ever about what the leader accomplishes. It's about the team and what the team is doing. And does the leader create the environment and enable the team to be successful? Because ultimately, leaders aren't recognized for what they do. They're recognized for what the team does or what the team does not do. And so leaders, to me, should duck credit and give it to their team, but step up and take blame and absorb that blame and not pass that along to the team. A leader's role is not glory. A leader's role is hard work. It's about getting the right people in the right places to accomplish the goals that you've set out. And in my view, the biggest mistake a leader can make is in trying to do the job themselves. That's not what leadership is about. It's about working with others to accomplish a goal that we've agreed upon together to accomplish. So as district leaders, future district leaders, area and division directors, and whatever role that you're taking, first, the goal is the district mission. We build new clubs and support all clubs in achieving excellence. So that's what we do. All the rest of it is not important. All the rest of it is how we accomplish those two things. Are your club meetings great? Then you've been successful as a leader in helping those clubs become great. And sometimes as a leader, you just get out of the way and let them do their thing and don't bother them. And they're really good. When the right people are in place, that can happen. Selfless leadership is a critical part of leadership in Toastmasters. And it's another thing is elections can be difficult. But the minute the election is over, we are all on the same team. And it must be that way in Toastmasters. It must be that way.
That's a wonderful learning and a very good takeaway, considering what used to be a manager has now become a leader. So thank you for that wonderful thing for us. So we have come to the end of our list of questions.
I do have one last question for you, and I'm really excited to ask you this. How does it feel to be the CEO during the 100th year?
Wow.
It is a heavy responsibility. It feels great to be part of the celebration, to acknowledge the fabulous accomplishments of 100 years. And there is responsibility in looking to the future and creating the environment or influencing the environment that will enable us to have a strong 5 years and 10 years and 25 years and 50 years. The feeling is good. Sometimes it's difficult to celebrate over a longer period of time because there's so much work to be done always. But I think back to the meeting that I went to on the 22nd just last week and the goodness in that meeting. There were people from all over the world that joined that club meeting by Zoom, as well as those that were on location in California. And the positive energy that flowed through that meeting was an amazing experience and one that I won't forget.
Excellent. Would you like to share some concluding remarks with the listeners of District 98?
I think that was my conclusion.
We're ending it on a very high note, Daniel. We have a lot to learn from you. I'm just a little flabbergasted we didn't get in touch with you a lot sooner.
It's good to have been with you today. Thank you both for your preparation and your excellent job hosting. Nicely done.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. So that brings us to the end of second episode of Toast to Success. And the episode today was known as Timeless Toast, a tale of 100 years. It was a pleasure to have the Toastmasters CEO, Mr. Daniel Ricks, and we were very excited to hear on your experiences and expertise on the last 100 years. And we are very excited for the next 100 years. And we are pretty sure your insights will undoubtedly resonate with our listeners and provide them with valuable perspectives. I'm joined today by my co-host, Meenakshi, and we are here concluding this episode. Thank you and have a lovely day and night, all of you.